Hey, just popping in with another one. I'm gonna keep running with this to keep the same the same inspiration. But so what I was saying is that if you watch any of the previous videos in this small series where I'm appearing in the same outfit, the purpose is not to commend or inspire or incite people to take up studying astrology for its own sake, nor to steer a person from that direction if that's what a person is interested in. I think that a lot of life is best simple. Like the best things in life are simple, even the birds and the bees. And the simpler we can get, the better, I think. And so it doesn't have to be sophisticated. It's like, why reinvent the wheel? Why reinvent the season? Why reinvent the planets? But still, just a little bit of context can help set up ideas, and that's the only reason I gave that context of how it can be appreciated that that what we're calling money in the strictest sense is actually currency, whether and not it is made of like gold, copper, and silver. Even like a digital or paper, maybe fiat or representative currency can still function as currency, and that it's like a conduit and an induction between engagement and effort and vitality, and all of human life can be appreciated in terms of vitality, but also in terms of electricity. I think if you were to study military science or medical science, both of those would approach the human body as an electrical an electrical an electrical configuration. That's an insight that um a an eminent scholar gave me that insight in privacy, that electricity is how a military would appreciates a human body, in the most simple terms. So if you were to approach somebody, heaven forbid, in some engagement of combat, what you would be looking to do would be to neutralize them. That is, to make them not positive or negative, but simply fixed, immobile, and no longer a threat. Because maybe you could say something can be a threat, positive or negative, but if something is simply neutralized, then you have preserved your advantage in your initiative, which is your objective in any kind of conflict. In electrical terms, and so like you're not to exchange blows, or you're not to do anything greater or less than what it does to complete an objective in the strictest military sense. It's similar to even the universe. It's just that economy and efficiency is what wins, and what is therefore viable. And it's the same in like maybe military terms, but then equally in medical terms is that, and if you study medicine, you'd likely start with anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the actual the actual components of the human being is the anatomy, but then the physiology is the operation of those of the components of the body, the meaning of the body. So you can maybe say that and anatomy is very technical, but physiology is both technical and dynamic, because it's more than the sum of the parts when you're speaking in terms of physiology, maybe anatomy too, but physiology. And I think that in that term is broken down into systems. So you would start learning about like the systems of the body. So you have like your cardiopulmonary, that's like your heart and your lungs, which is like this maybe two separate systems, but is very closely related. Then you have your digestive system, your nervous system, your skeletal system, your muscular system, your skin, which is actually the largest organ in your body, and then your vital organs. And these are all different, seamless and intermingled and dynamic systems. But the unique thing is that they're actually they're a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And should one fail, the others can come crashing down like a domino effect. If you ever lived with someone, loved someone, or cared someone that suffered some form of setback medically, many things can start to go downhill very quickly. But it's similar with a person's life, where your livelihood can go down very quickly. If one thing fails, if you fail one deadline, one bill, that can be a cascading effect. Because say it had been a lot of times you don't appreciate your cell phone bill as being that expensive or that important. How far could you get with your cell phone? How much could you lose without your cell phone? How much could you lose without your cell phone operating, in terms of job opportunities? Even just the most basic functioning would come to a screeching halt should a person lose their cell phone, heaven forbid. And then other things come to a halt, and then it's harder to recover and adjust for any one of those once one has fallen. If you've ever actually needed to communicate, like, and you didn't have access to your phone for some reason, heaven forbid, it can be very difficult. You have to wait and you have to go to a library. By that point, you likely be on foot if you're not if you're not foot, no pun intended. If you're not sustaining your phone bill, you likely be on foot. So you make it up to the library in the limited scope of daytime hours, and then you might have to wait to have access to a computer, and you might actually have to contend with other people waiting for it, and you would be very uncomfortable and not at your same leisure as you would with the phone. But still, opportunity is opportunity. But the most basic things start to get difficult and more difficult and mounting. But it's the same with a human body. So therefore, appreciating life from the standpoint of military science, medical science, financial science, all can be appreciated in electrical terms. And I would think maybe a lot of other things could, maybe a lot of physics could, a lot of chemistry can be appreciated in electrical terms. So I just wanted to point out how electrical life is. And so when you see the lightning, that's not just by coincidence how much electrical activity is going on. But I think that a lot of what we perceive is the least of what's happening. Whatever you perceive, by the time something it becomes apparent to your natural perception, likely the cause of what you're perceiving has been conspiring, and life is almost like a boiling cauldron of these influences that are the very things we've said and did in the past for ourselves, to other people, for other people, intermingling, not always in our best interest. Whatever positive, whatever worthy or less than worthy intention we began doing something, the aftermath of that, the consequence of that, it can become very dynamic, and it can be both favorable and unfavorable. And vicissitude is a word for the wavering of outcome and fortune, and it goes back and forth. So something going misfortune can set you up for great fortune, and something fortunate can set up for misfortune. And according to the YouTuber King Noble, all of life therefore is cyclical. And if you appreciate like the Holy Bible, you can get a little bit of the science of like farming and crops from the Holy Bible. That would maybe be like in almanacs in the past. And you get an appreciation for how cyclical life is. An example is like resting the crops or the soil, like maybe every 7 years or so. It's significant. But in that term, a human being will undergo a cyclical fortune of favor and misfortune, redoubling and resounding in a cycle. And you actually, the low sets up the high, and the high sets up the low, and you can't entirely get outside of that, because if you were to get outside of cycles, you would have got outside of the universe by that point. But um 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 but but by the time we get to experience something, likely the causes have already been at play for a long time, and it's just the last of which is just like life is doing us the courtesy of letting us see what already existed and transpired before we got to perceiving it. And so if you also take life, now how much of life comes from the trees, right? But I think if you were to look at a tree, the tree actually has more of a life underground. A lot of trees are bigger in terms of their roots underground and have more of a life underground. And the surface is just almost like a formality of like, not that the activity of the surface is not important, but you could almost say that that trees and life on the surface of the earth only makes the soil richer. That's maybe what's the purpose of life? To make the soil richer for the deeper life, because life is not superficial, not the least of which the earth that we're on. So you can maybe say there's a richer, deeper life beneath the earth. And like I think I was talking to someone recently about how like some of your beautiful mountains in different areas, it's actually the many generations of tree and plant and animals that live, have a life, and then fall, and then yet accrue like that, and that gives you a mountain. And then, but the dynamics are a little bit different with a volcano, but it's similar. So were you to study a mountain or volcano, you could have a keen insight into the past. I grew up in the Southwest, and if you go to the top of some of these high mountains, they actually have a fossil record because that had once been the bottom of the ocean. The entire southwestern United States, as desert as it is, the reason it's a desert is because it was once an ocean floor. And if you go to some of its highest mountains, that is like the Rocky Mountains, the beautiful, epic Rocky Mountains that go from Canada to South America, a lot of that, it bears a record of being on the bottom of the ocean, like in the Southwest. But all I meant to say is that the what we know of anything is the most superficial aspect. So even what we appreciate as lightning might be the most superficial aspect of electrical activity. What we know of electricity might be the most superficial aspect of electricity, is what I'm saying.